First of all, Professor Clifford Larson, thank you very much for the appropriate way in which you opened this conference. I need to correct you on one statistic. You said that there are 91 exchange programs. It's only 2 weeks ago that the 92nd one has been concluded with our institution, the Deakin Law School, of student exchanges. So it's just wonderful for us to be here, and for me in particular, with such an historic moment. So this is just a wonderful school, and I cannot stop raving about it. But thank you very much for the appropriate way in which you've opened it, and we are really looking forward for continued collaboration, and we will also, of course, discuss staff exchanges in future. I would secondly just like to really thank my colleague Axel Kemmerer for his patience with me. I'm a very impatient person, and he's tolerated me, and so I really thank him. We have had, I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute, we've had just some fantastic relationships since September last year, and I will say more about that. Let me just quickly explain a few things. You will see that the forum is held under the general banner of the ICGL, International Corporate Governance and Law Banner. And people ask me, what does this stand for? It stands for, and it's owned by nobody but, well, me, and it's very neutral. I was very strongly advised when I started off with the project of which this is part, the Anneliese Meyer Research Award, to have a neutral banner so that I can get more institutions involved under this neutral banner, the ICGL banner. So this is something that will continue for future purposes. It meant that in 2013 I held the first forum with the Anneliese Meyer Research Award in Münster, and I'll say more about my Münster colleagues because they are here in a moment, where we really had a fantastic forum dealing with international issues and themes in the area of corporate governance. And that sort of set the tone for several other forums that I held. The second one that I held was the forum at Deakin University, where the main focus was on board diversity, in particular gender diversity, and whether we should follow the model of Norway of compulsory mandatory quotas, which was a very interesting forum. Then it allowed me the next year, I skipped 1 year, but in 2016 I held a forum in Hong Kong with the Chinese University of Hong Kong, where we really debated general issues regarding corporate governance, directors' duties, and it was also a very stimulating one. In the same year, we went to Beijing, where we debated corporate social responsibilities, and of course it's very well known that we are here at the moment, and we will have this wonderful forum over the next day and a half, and I'm very excited about it. I thought of just giving you some sort of a background so that you understand what this ICGL is all about. And so far it's worked very well for me. So what I would like to do now, I would just like to make a few comments, a little bit of a few stories that I would like to tell about each and every one of you, just to make sure that you know why you've been invited, and to ensure that I don't discriminate against anybody. First of all, Axel's picture is on there. I would just really like to thank Axel again. We've met, as I said, in September. He visited me in Australia, where he first presented a paper at the Corporate Law Teachers Association, and thereafter I invited him to come over to my center, the Center for Comparative Corporate Governance, and he had a brilliant seminar that he held in central Melbourne, in our downtown Deakin campus in Melbourne, on Brexit and the consequences and the influence on the EU, which really the people in Australia enjoyed tremendously. So it is a relationship that also cemented this exchange program that we have, and we will definitely have further discussions. Secondly, Jill North, Jill, sitting just here in front of us. Jill and I have known each other for 5 years. I've met her also at the conference, the Corporate Law Teachers Association. Then we started to attend the same conference in Australia. It brings all the corporate law teachers together, and it is a fantastic way of networking amongst corporate law teachers. It's the envy of many other countries in the world, and really that is where networking starts. And since then, Jill and I became very good friends. She's been invited to, from the moment that I had the forums, to all the other forums. She will be presenting here today. It says something about her ability, otherwise she would not have been here. She is currently also a colleague of mine as a professorial research fellow. So I think that indirectly, it's not, of course, had nothing to do with me, but it is good that I now have Jill not only as a friend, but as a colleague. Karen, how did I get you to come? That is an interesting question. What I did, I asked my librarian and my academic assistant to do searches on Google Scholar to find people who's been very active in the area of multinationals and groups of companies. And your name came up on both occasions. And then when I had a look at the work that you've been doing, I thought we just must have you here. So based on your merits and your scholarly work in these areas, I thought that you could make a significant contribution to this. So welcome. It's really good to have you here. Then Charlotte, you were selected on basically the same basis. Your name came up, and we just realized that it is fantastic that you've got so much to say about these areas, or the area of multinationals, groups of companies, regulation, and I really look forward to also listening to your particular presentation. I may say a little bit more, because I've got a few minutes, about Andreas Ruhmkorff. Andreas and I came a really quite a long way. We've met each other in Münster. Münster is a very central point for me, and I'll say more about that a little bit later. I was really impressed before he even finished his PhD thesis, Corporate Social Responsibility, Private Law and Global Supply Chains. Was really impressed with the work. He sent me a copy of his PhD. And then we started to collaborate in a research sense. I've provided him with a scholarship under the Anneliese Meyer Research Award, and we published a joint article based on that. Thereafter, I got him involved in a book that was published by Routledge on the disqualification of company directors. He wrote 2 chapters in that particular book, one with me and one on his own, on the German and the UK model of disqualification of company directors. We further had a forum or a seminar in Nuremberg on the 19th of September that was hosted by Marcus here. So you see the networking is getting closer and closer. And then he will also present a paper for me at the next forum, the ICGL forum in Leeds, 15th and 16th of January. And then he's invited me to present a paper at Sheffield on the 17th of January. So as you can see, I really enjoy and work on long-term relationships, and it's just so incredibly stimulating for me to do that. I'm watching the time. I've got 8 minutes left. The next person, Andrew, I can just tell you that you were identified. Where is Andrew? Oh, he's not here at the moment. He was identified by my colleague Louis de Coker, who said that he would like to present a joint paper with Andrew, and he just told me that for this particular topic of beneficial ownership of shareholders, which is incredibly important nowadays, that Andrew is without any doubt one of the world leaders in this area, and therefore I really look forward. It is an area that I'm also very interested in, because it is so complicated and complex. Who are the real owners of the shares? Under which things can they hide, and who's really in control of companies. This is my colleague Louis de Coker, so they will write the joint paper, but Andrew will present. The next person is Susan Watson. This is also a long story, but I'll cut it short. I met Susan also at the Corporate Law Teachers Association in about 2010. And thereafter, Susan and I had regular contact. I abused her by asking her to examine PhD theses, to review articles for me. We then, in June, presented a joint conference in Auckland, which was one of my center, and the Auckland Faculty of Law, which I think was really very successful. And she also invited me in 2013 to present a paper on gender diversity, which was an inspiration for me. It was the first time that I really started to do research in that area that eventually led to the forum that I held. And it really triggered my interest. So once people are invited to these things and you start to collaborate and you start to build personal relationships, it just becomes wonderful. I need to say at this stage that with these forums, after Leeds, with the forums that I've held, I would have involved 35 people, academics, top scholars from 15 different countries. And this networking is just growing. It's mushrooming at this stage, and I feel very excited about that and about the future of our collaboration. I've got 5 minutes left. James Faulkner, James and I share something in common. We are both ex-South Africans. So, and of course, we share the same interests in corporate law, international law, and he has been recently appointed to the University of Munster in a very special role of internationalization, generally introducing and exposing the students to common law systems. And I think it's really an exciting sort of experiment for Munster University. And I know for a fact, without any details, there were many people applying for a position like that. And it's wonderful that, James, that we would also be able to meet in future in Munster. So I look forward to also discuss additional forms of collaboration. Marcus, I've already mentioned to you that I met Marcus the first time in Nuremberg, but I didn't pick him as a presenter before I knew him. His name also came up over and over again as a top specialist in this particular area, and with a real interest in issues related to supply chains and multinationals and abuses by corporations. So he is most definitely a person that we will also stay in touch with, and I'm looking forward to future collaboration with him as well. So now to my Munster colleague that who will present, Matthias Kasper. Matthias and I met each other in 2003 when I visited Munster. We immediately started to have very interesting discussions. He got involved in the second edition of the German corporate governance book that we already had at that stage. And we are in the process, the fourth edition has just been published. And this brings me then to my other very good colleague, Professor Ingo Zenger, who's sitting next to Matthias. Ingo nominated me for the Anneliese Meyer Research Award. And of course, I'm absolutely forever indebted to Ingo. And Ingo and I, alike with Matthias and I, have formed a very close personal relationship as well as a professional relationship. Ingo and I not only published the book together, but also an article together. And our collaboration is just expanding. I have invited several of his academic assistants and his other doctoral students to Australia and wrote joint papers with them. So thank you, Ingo. Really, I appreciate it. And his center is fantastic. I feel so welcome whenever I am there. Jung San Siop, of course, He was very strongly recommended to me by Axel as one of the world's leading specialists in the area here, very prominent in South Korea and internationally. And I really am so glad that I've got the opportunity to expand also my contacts to South Korea. Then we have Karolina Glinski. I'm struggling with the pronunciation, but I'll get there. I'll tell you why I'll get there. When my first girlfriend's name was Maria do Céu Perutiu Agostino. So at first, I couldn't pronounce her name, but for obvious reasons, I got there. And up to today, my wife is very jealous that I could remember her name and all her names. So I'll get there with the right pronunciation, if I can say Maria do Céu Perutiu Agostino. Thank you very much for agreeing. Peter, her husband, suggested after we've approached her that they are working on the same areas. Absolutely, Peter was also strongly recommended by Axel, and it was just a pleasure for me when he suggested that Carolina should also present to get her involved. And then finally, Regnier Pillay, Rajani. You see, I'll get there. Rajani, you were also identified based on your profile in this area, and I am welcome, and I'm really looking forward also to for your participation in this event. I must finally just say I'm really pleased. You would not have seen it, but Professor Karsten Schmidt walked in a few minutes ago. It is just such a privilege to have Professor Schmidt here. I can rave for hours. I haven't got the time about him. My first exposure to German law was really through his books. I think most of us were. So thank you very much for the honor of just attending today. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's good. So, and with that, we will now immediately go to the first session, and that's Professor Jill North. Jill, floor is yours.